Okay, here we are, Tactical 40K. Again, this is the second episode, so we're going to go through a little bit of the list that I built. We're going to go through in segments, keeping this pretty short, and then go over some of the rationale, and then just to start things off, just to get a good gist of what I'm trying to do here. So, like I said before, our first kind of challenge is going to be to build a competitive Raven Guard army, and then implement it, and then see what happens. And of course, that's there's a lot of other things going on in 40K possible. There's always rule changes and meta changes, whatever you want to call it, and then the possible rollout of 10th edition. Well, that shouldn't happen, anytime soon. So we should have the ability to take this Raven Guard army and at least put it in a battle in a larger tournament, hopefully, but more than likely in some small stuff, and then maybe we can get to that larger tournament with the rules we have right now. But based off where we're at now in the game, and analyzing tactics and what fits with me, I'm taking this underdog army, and we're going to see what we can do with it. So with that being said, I've spent actually probably months now, or months, just building this list. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm just running through Battle Scribe, running reports, kind of like on there, looking at tactics, watching people utilize some. Granted, there's not a lot of Raven Guard stuff out there, especially currently, but watching certain units operate within maybe other chapters and how they do against certain enemies. And granted, there's going to be people that probably disagree with this, and this list is evolving. So up until like yesterday, I had one unit. We're going to talk about it because I'm going to go through my HQ choices right now, and then we'll go through troops the next video probably, and then go into the elites and some of these other these little bread and butter units that I'm going to be utilizing. So I'll just get into the HQ, and we're going to go into some of the rationale. So one thing, like Raven Guard, some of the rules, they got the Shadow Masters. For the whole army, which is pretty cool, and we'll get into that when we talk about the whole army as a whole. But if you don't know what that is, just pull up like a WAP, and you can kind of look at what Shadow Max actually gets you. It's like, there's, because the Raven Guard is supposed to be these elusive characters, and I believe their founder, can shift, so he can't be seen, and or he comes in and out of almost reality, but it's like his skin, he's able to get this, so it's harder for them to hit. So like, I think it's like within past 18 inches, you get the dense cover if they're on a ranged weapon, and I believe within, if you're further than 12, you get like light cover. I could be wrong on that off the top of my head because I don't have the rule right. Well, let me look. I got it right here. So we might as well we'll just with Shadow Masters. Shadow. Each time a ranged attack is made against a unit with this tactic, if an attacker is more than 18 inches away, then the unit with this tactic is treated as though having the benefits of light cover against that attack. Each time an ranged attack is made against an infantry unit with this tactic that is entirely on or within a terrain feature, if the attacker is more than 12 inches away, that unit with the tactic is treated as having the benefits of dense cover against attack. So, I mean, it's pretty legit if legit tactic. I mean, I'm probably the better ones out there, but I'm utilizing now. We've committed to this army. I'm like, okay, that's not bad. I like it. In fact, I might tailor some of what I'm doing to those abilities, right? So anyway, let's get into HQ because I don't got a whole lot of time here. So I started off HQ playing around with the HQ slots. I was like, well, when I kind of took away the successor chapter thing, I was like, you know what? For the points, it's hard to beat their chapter master right now, Shrike. I mean, he's a real tough character to. Well, he's probably really much the only named character they have in like the list. I guess you could build some other ones, but that has a data sheet, and is pretty is pretty good. So I try to build like a captain equivalent of Shrike to do similar things to him when I was looking at his data sheet, and I couldn't get it in that 135 point category. It was always like 150 or whatnot. Adding a jump pack, adding certain things, and still some of the stats didn't quite add up. Adding certain stratagems to give him maybe the different abilities, and it just didn't add up. So like the cost effectiveness. Granted, hang on, one last point on that. There were certain things that might have been a little bit better than Shrike. but then they would be offset by other things that weren't as good. So when I did like my cost benefit analysis in my head about it, I was like, you know what, Shrike is, for the points, a really good character, and for what he does. So 135 points, I'm putting him in there. I actually don't have that model yet, but we're gonna get that model. Now going down the other part, I guess I can go. I'll throw stats up here in the corner so you see what I'm talking about with Shrike. And I probably should have done it with the captain so you could see what my comparative analysis was on adding Shrike and not just building a captain. It came down to points and abilities. I mean, just off the top of my head, Shrike had another 2 inches on movement. He also had some, what was it? Was it wing deliverance? Let's look. The diving charge was actually pretty cool. So diving charge, after this model finishes a charge move, you select one enemy unit within engagement range of it. Roll 1d6. On a 4+, that enemy unit suffers a mortal wound. I thought that was pretty cool. Not only that, when he, what is it? There was another thing about him that was pretty cool too. Well, of course, he has some, re-rolls, jump pack of 416. Failed charge re-rolls. That was good for units, other jump pack units around him, because I plan on running him with, some. We'll get into that later. But anyway, so Shrike, just to keep this short, I got to keep going. So Shrike is going to be in there. Put the data's right up there. We go into my other one. I had a librarian for a long time because I really wanted to utilize some of the stuff that the Raven Guard had, like I think a Shadow Step, where I can take a character and place him somewhere else if I wanted to in the midst of a battle. But what it came down to, I was looking at all my deployment characteristics and abilities. I was like, I've got a lot of those. I've got stratagems. I've got a lot of warlord traits where I've got a lot of abilities with the troops choices that I've made, where I can redeploy, where I can put forth units out, advance them on the board, where I can put them in strategic reserve, put them in concealed positions. I can uplift, units and put them somewhere else, or even the basic Space Marine guerrilla tactics stratagem. So I was like, you know what? I don't need that. And in fact, I could use that 100 points somewhere else. So I know there's some good psychic abilities, and people might disagree with that, kind of giving into the psychic or kind of stepping away from that phase of the game. But I am initially going to not run a librarian. So I pulled that librarian off, and what I did is I just went with a lieutenant in Phobos armor, which I already had the lieutenant. It came with the box. And I made him my warlord as of now. That's what I'm going to do. And what I did is I gave him 2 things. Because I got him a stratagem, and then I spent a CP. Actually, spent 2 CPs. Because I made him, where is it? I got Company of Heroes. He's got Lord of the Seat, which is, after both players have deployed their army, select up to 3 Phobos units from your army and redeploy them. If the mission uses strategic reserves, any of those units can be placed in strategic reserve without spending additional CPs, regardless of how many units are already in strategic reserve. If both players have this ability of redeploying units, roll off, and whoever can redeploy theirs first. It's like, that's very Raven-esque, Raven Guard-esque. So I like that. Master of Ambush. At the start of the first battle round, before the first turn begins, if this warlord's on the battle, you can select one other friendly infantry unit. Excluding that on the battlefield, remove that unit and this warlord. I was just on it. From this warlord, you can't do Centurion units. Remove that unit and the warlord from the battlefield. Set them up anywhere on the battlefield that's more than 9 inches of the enemy deployment zone and more than 9 inches from an enemy model. If both players have this ability and redeploy units, first roll off, winner chooses. So basically 2 very advantageous redeployment warlord traits. And you're saying, well, this is pretty forward heavy in the first moves. And when you're thinking about counterinsurgencies, and when you're thinking about clandestine type warfare, sometimes we can utilize that, just the the violence of action immediately. We can move around these units and hopefully take controlling interest in certain objectives in the board. So this is my I guess what I'm thinking of. What I'm thinking of doing. So it is very forward oriented. It's very first turn-ish oriented in a way, unless you do the strategic reserves. So like Master of Ambush is like, okay, we can redeploy these guys pretty much anywhere on the battlefield besides the deployment zone. And so you can use that. I mean, you can't use Centurions on that one yet. So anyway, but on Lord of the Seat, we can also take three Phobos units and put them somewhere else. But then I also have other abilities within other units, and some of them are Phobos as well. So I don't know if I even want that. I might actually change that one. I know that I said I've thought about this a lot, but I might actually change one of these and do something else, because I'm thinking about it with all the Phobos stuff I already have. Phobos units, and then also units with other abilities like concealed positions and infiltration and whatnot. I might not need two of these, so I don't know why I still have that in there. I probably should have thought about it. Now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, well, maybe I should look at some of these other warlord traits and really and try to bolster up some other areas of the army. But anyway, so those are my two troop choices. I'll put those up. I might change that lieutenant one, like I said, but for the most part, I'm running just 2 HQ slots. And then you'll see why and where I distributed that extra 100 points. It's not that I didn't think about that librarian, but what I really did thought is about I needed to bolster some other shooting aspects of the army, some more tankish arears, and fire support for this army. Because it really wasn't that tanky. I was thinking, well, you know what? I need something to be able to take down vehicles. And I had to really think about that, so I took away that librarian and utilized those points somewhere else, and then kind of shuffled around some of these other units and came up with to fill up my heavy support slots. But anyways, so that's my HQ slot. We'll go over troops next and kind of what I was thinking with them, and it's kind of everything is overlapping itself with this army. There's a reason for everything that I've really thought about. Of course, it's going to be situational. Of course, you're going to run into armies that are going to be a little bit harder to impact with such strategies. But for the most part, I'm playing towards running objectives and stratagems, and we'll go into some of the Raven Guard stratagems later on after we get through the army. But so far, this is what we're trying to build, a utility army that I can use that's fast, that takes over areas of the board initially right off the bat, tries to score as many points as they can, and hopefully hold areas, and then also move, use fire maneuver warfare, move fast, close in, and destroy enemy units. And you'll see those units, not necessarily in the troops, but when we get into the elites, you'll see some of those units and what I'm thinking. But anyway, I'll talk to you later. Peace.